Hey, this is Mike with Riding in the Ozarks, and normally I'm talking about Harley Davidson, and every once in a while somebody will comment on Indian and tell me how great it is and how much better it is than Harley Davidson, and I'll say something about their Polaris as a joke, kind of, but also kind of because Indian motorcycles as we know it today was a brand that Polaris bought. It may have been America's first motorcycle company, but it was closed and shut down for many years, and Indian bought the name and rebranded some of the Victory styling motorcycles and stuff and whatnot. That's a whole nother debate. But the fact is that your Indian motorcycle will no longer be a Polaris in the near future. So Indian Motorcycles is being spun off from Polaris as a standalone company. Now, if you don't know, Indian Motorcycles is only about 7% of Polaris's revenue. Their on-road segment of that is not that big for Polaris. So, I mean, you think about it, it's like giving up a small hobby that you dabbled in, but, wasn't a big part of your life. It wasn't your main hobby or anything else. You just did it, a little bit here and there. And I think part of this may be stemming from the fact that the president and CEO of the on-road segment is planning to retire. That's in this press announcement as well. So what is happening is the majority stake in Indian Motorcycles is being sold to Carolwood LP, which is an investment firm out of California. I think I read that it's been around since 2014, and they will be the majority stakeholder. So that implies that Indian's going to keep some, or Polaris is going to keep some share of Indian, but a smaller share. All the employees are rolling over and staying in the facilities and all that stuff. So it doesn't look like anybody's losing any jobs. There's going to be a new CEO. It's a name that if you pay attention to the industry, you may know. He's got experience with Rumble On, which is a huge dealer network. He's got experience with Vance and Hines. Been in the industry a long time. He's going to take over as CEO when this happens. The current president CEO of Polaris has announced that he's going to retire after this transition is completed. He was probably looking to retire, would be my guess, and maybe nobody else at Polaris wanted to be a part of this or absorb this, or maybe they couldn't find someone else that made sense to be the president of this division and continue to be the champion for it and go after funding for projects and things like that. So spinning it off. Now, I assume because it's not going to be a publicly traded company like Polaris is, financials, sales numbers, those kinds of things are going to be harder to get unless they do make them available. And if they make them available, then we'll have a better look at what Indian's profit and revenue and market share and all those things are, because Polaris kind of lumped the on-road segment all together, and they have some other products that are in their on-road segment that are not Indian Motorcycles. So it was really hard to get a real solid picture of what percent of revenue or sales numbers were like for Indian Motorcycles. I didn't get into the Indian financials a lot, but I looked at them occasionally, especially during COVID when there was a lot of concern about places shutting down and how the sales were declining and the revenue and supply chain problems and all that kind of stuff. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Indian Motorcycles. I don't know if this is a bad thing in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, it may be a good thing that they'll no longer be the little 7% stepchild that just gets attention when they scream loud enough and is fighting for attention with 90% of the company. Polaris will focus on what they've been doing with the other 90%, and they'll remove a distraction, and it'll be a standalone thing with its own leadership, and hopefully the funding will continue to be there that will allow that to grow. Now, I'm not a huge fan of Indian. I rode a few bikes. I actually rode almost everything in their lineup, including the Pursuit when it came out and stuff. The FTR, I did a lot of demo rides 3 or 4 years ago and rode almost everything in the fleet and didn't have anything that appealed to me personally as much as Harley Davidson. And when the new Street Glides came out and I rode those, I knew that's where I wanted to go. And we all do a little kidding about riding a Honda or Indian. I don't really care what you ride. I care how you ride. All jokes aside, competition is great for the consumer. So I'm glad to see that Indian Motorcycles is not getting shut down, that they're being sold off and maybe have more potential to be its own standalone unit. I think that's good for consumers. It's good for competition. Makes Harley-Davidson continue to strive and perform and, compete. So that'll be great. Besides, if Indian Motorcycles went away, who would compete with us in King of the Baggers? I don't have a lot else to say on it. I just wanted to share this news out there. It's kind of a big deal. And I thought people ought to know what's going on and my perception of it, my take on it as a guy that covers a lot of the financial stuff for Harley-Davidson. I don't know if this is a bad thing. People have actually said that they think it would be good if Harley-Davidson went back to private, where decisions weren't driven by stakeholder shares and stock prices and things like that. So this might be a great thing for Indian, and maybe it's something that would turn out to be a good thing for Harley-Davidson if it happened to them. It's hard to say. We'll see how it works out for Indian. Maybe that'll give us an idea. All right, we're getting ready to go to Born Free. I'm going to chop this video up and get it out before we leave. Y'all stay safe, keep on riding, and we'll see you in the next one.